Hey everybody, it's Sean. I'm here in my studio and it's Super Tuesday, big day for US politics. And I don't usually talk about politics, although I'm a very politically aware guy. And I jumped on today because I was thinking about my history with politics. And when it comes to US politics, the first election that I really took an interest in and really looked at carefully was the Bush-Gore election in 2000. I was a really young guy at the time and starting to have my very first adult ideas about things. I read a lot of Adbusters, books like Culture Jam and No Logo. I was really part of that anti-corporate movement, and that sort of seemed like the Bush and Gore election was a clash of ideas and clash of viewpoints that were going to define a lot about how we as a civilization were going to run things over the next century. So the election happened, and almost right away, like less than a year after Homeboy took office, 9/11 happened. And now all of a sudden that argument and those ideas and those conversations are tossed away under this whole thing of, oh, no, now's the time that we got to come together. And my attitude was, because I'm naturally suspicious. I'm a suspicious guy, and I'm always wondering when it comes to big stuff like that. I'm saying I'm the kind of guy who says, hey, follow the money. You know what I'm saying? So my attitude at that time was like, no. This is a time when it's more important than ever to be having these big conversations, because this is the time when people are going to be trying to fleece you and pull the wool over your eyes. These things happen, and then the people that thrive are the people who take advantage of the chaos. So I was trying to encourage people to be aware of who's trying to take advantage of the chaos, who stands to gain from all of the uncertainty that was going on at the time. So when Bush started going into the Middle East and pushing military action there, I was not with it. I actually took my guitar out onto the balcony of the apartment I lived in at the time and played All You Need Is Love out to the neighborhood while they were dropping the first bombs live on CNN. Because it's just, what else can you do? What can an individual do? It just seemed so big and so remote and so removed from, and also the fact that, I'm in Canada thinking about this stuff, and this all affects the whole world. You know what I mean? Especially now that it's been so many years later and they've got so many foreign wars going on, which leads me to wonder why anybody would want that job of being president and be suspicious of their motives. But that's a whole other thing that comes later. You transition from the Bush years into the Obama years, and I was one of those people that was thinking that this is going to signal a real big change in the culture, and that things are going to change for the better in a lot of ways. But then he made two very, very key blunders that made me not just turn away from him, but really turn away from politics generally, because the point when I realized that politics is what it is, and people got to be a certain way to do well in it, and things kind of shift slightly one way or the other, but they generally stay the same. And it was when Obama did two things. First is the bailouts for the banks and the car companies. I was not for that at all. I thought that he should have let those companies go under, and then all the money that got spent bailing them out, spend it on helping people who are affected by the fallout of those companies, because too big to fail is just so much BS. And then when he pulled out of Iraq, and that left a vacuum that ended up being filled by ISIS, and that I felt like was a decision being made based on ideology and not on the facts as they are. So I couldn't get with that. So we had the Bush era, we're coming out of the Obama era, and we're seeing whose era it's going to be next in terms of who's going to be, as the saying goes, the leader of the free world. And it seems like there's only three names that anybody is taking seriously right now, and that's Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump. Now, I see a lot of hate for Donald Trump on my Facebook feed, and from the way people talk about it, it really seems like it's just the classic age-old thing of people don't actually get informed and people don't do the reading. They see the headlines and it gets their emotions riled up, and then that stuff gets repeated, and all of a sudden now it's fact. And when I see this bamboozling take place, I slap my forehead, because I'm the kind of guy who likes to be informed and likes to go find out what the person actually said. And on both sides of the political spectrum, I see it happen, where somebody makes a comment or says something, and then it gets twisted a certain way in an article, and then that article gets referenced as fact when future articles are making points about other things, and that's how the echo chamber happens. You know what I mean? So the whole thing about Trump, whether or not you think he's racist, whether or not you think he's whatever, I don't think that it's really about Trump at all. I think that Trump is, because of his celebrity and because of his personality and because he's an entertaining figure, he's been able to come out and position himself as a figure that represents what a lot of people are feeling, which is kind of just a vote of no confidence in the whole thing. They look at people who came to this position in, how close they are to being elected president or getting their party's nomination. And they had, aside from Trump, they've all come through the slog of, the last 16 years of what politics has been. And I think a lot of people sort of feel like I do, that knowing what we know about how this stuff goes and seeing what we've seen, we just have no reason to think that anybody who's gotten this far in the process, because anybody whose heart is pure and wants to do that job because they really think that they can do good for the world and want to do good for people, that person is going to get chewed up and spit out long before they ever got far enough in the process to get this close to the nomination. So I think there's a lot of people who kind of feel more like what I feel, which is like a distrust of anybody who wants that job, because it's like, knowing what we know about the kind of people that seek those positions and the kind of scandals that go on and whatnot, it's like, why do you even want that job? Because the only reason that comes to mind, or the main reason I think that comes to mind, would be just that it's a power hungry sociopathic thing. And just that whole, and so militarily, economically, there's just so many areas in which that job is going to be extremely difficult and be a no-win situation. Like look at Obama over 8 years. Like, he just got so messed with by people in his own party, by people in the other party, and there's just no way a guy in that position could have got anything done. And it's just, what reason does anybody have to think that the next 4 years or the next 8 years are going to be any different? Well, then along comes Trump, who is not so much the people want him to be president, I think, as much as they're just saying, well, it's at least another option from more of the same, or at least represents a potential for at least something different. And I think just that shred of a potential for something different is enough to turn a lot of people onto what he's pushing. And what he's pushing is being labeled a lot of different things, and it's being talked about by a lot of people. And some of those people doing the talking, I think, should be ashamed of themselves. And not to say that I like Trump or I support him, but I do see how I'll see where somebody wrote the article about what he said, and it's like, okay, well, you obviously heard the speech because you knew to write this article, so you know that he didn't actually mean that. And it's not just Trump. I see this happen again and again and again with not just even just political candidates, just people in public life, right? We live in the online lynch mob culture and all that kind of stuff. It's a crazy world out there, and it's Super Tuesday. And I don't know. I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff and wondering what it all amounts to, and I'm just curious where you're at with all of it and what you got to say about it. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments.